Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Voice Essentials live hangout. I'm sorry I'm running a little bit late today. I am completely racked and stacked with students, and as you all know, I sort of etched this 1 hour block out so that we can do these live hangouts each Monday at 2 p.m. and Australian Eastern Standard Time. So it's great to see Linda and Gavin already jumping into the live chat. If you are watching the replay of this video, welcome. You are also a part of this. I know you don't get to interact with the live chat, but you still get to interact via the comments section in the comments section below. And so I love to hear your questions, and I love to answer your questions to the best of my ability whenever I can. But of course, if you are watching it live, then I encourage you to jump in and leave your questions. And we've got the R-O-L-Y Zoe Hi saying hi. G'day there. Nice to see you. Today we're talking about a subject that, look, I actually get quite passionate about this because I really care for you guys. I want to see you achieve your very best vocally. And a big part of that is overcoming your fears. So we're going to do that in a moment. But before we do, let me tell you about the day we've been having here in the studio. Very exciting kind of day, a lot of noise. We had to have a tree removed in the backyard of our property here. When I say property, it's a house block. But it was a massive old gum tree, and sadly over the last couple of years it's just been dying off, and it's a real shame because we had to cut it down. And I'm never keen to cut down trees that unnecessarily, and I'd waited as long as I could, but the guy told me that if you don't cut this down, it's going to fall down, and it'll either fall on my house or the neighbour's house. And so we've been doing that today. So it's been absolutely a buzz here. There are wood chips everywhere. It has just been a crazy kind of day. And in the meantime, my studio has been going gangbusters. We've been going all day, and so it's actually nice to take a moment, and all the noise has stopped, thankfully, in time for us to do our live hangout, because otherwise I don't think you would have been able to hear me. So the poor guys that had to take that tree down, I mean, it was about four to five stories high. It was a massive tree, so they've got to climb up it and do all of that. And so that's been quite interesting. Let me just fix something here, everyone. I just want to make sure. So that was kind of cool. But the poor guys that had to pull it down, it's quite humid here today. It's about 31 degrees, and they were absolutely covered in a lather of sweat, and with wood chips all over them. And anyway, crazy kind of day. So that's what the weather is like here. It's humid, it's warm. We're in the very peak of summer here in Australia, Brisbane, Australia. It gets quite humid here, so rather uncomfortable. Probably not as uncomfortable as it was about a couple of weeks ago, but nonetheless it's not pleasant, especially if you're having to work outside like the guys that took down the tree. Let us know what the temperature and the weather is like in your part of the woods. No pun intended. I see that many of you have been battling, in the Northern Hemisphere, many of you have been battling some really cold temperatures, and I hope you're all able to stay warm and out of the inclement weather, if that's what's going on around your part of the world. Of course, make sure you leave your questions and in the live chat section. I want to answer your questions today. Because I am really busy today, racked and stacked here in the studio, I'm going to pull up our live chat today at around in about 30 minutes. It's not going to be a long live chat today, and so we're going to get to your Q&A rather quickly. So make sure you start leaving your questions in the live chat, and we'll get to those, because that's what we do here. We try to answer your questions, and those questions that you've been wondering about in regards to your voice and learning to sing. I always love doing that for you and with you, because that's what we are here. We are a community, and it sounds really cliche, but I have actually learnt so much from you, the community. And as you guys not only challenge me to go and do further research into some of the questions that you guys ask, because there is just so much to know when it comes to this singing thing, but also some of the things that you guys have said to each other and the way you've encouraged each other. And that's what I want us to do. Make sure today that you are encouraging towards each other in the live chat. And we've got Linda is there doing our live moderation, and she'll be keeping an eye out for those nasty trolls and making sure that they get a little bit of a smack on the wrist and told where to go. But without any further ado, let's get into the rest of today's show, and we're going to talk about overcoming your vocal fears.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
So, fears when it comes to singing are very real. They're not imagined, they're not made up. I think if you're watching today's show, whether it be live right now or whether you're watching it as a replay, many of you have had to work through some very real fears when it comes to your singing. In fact, I had a new student start today, and she's a lady of more mature years, and she was sharing her fears in regards to her own voice. This is a very real thing for a lot of people. And you may, even now, even though that you engage here at Voice Essentials and perhaps with other Learn to Sing channels, and maybe you're having singing lessons, maybe you're even performing professionally, it may well still be that you are challenged and maybe held back, held captive by your fears. And I just want to talk through, just very briefly, some of the things that I think hold us back, and some of maybe create some discussion around a way forward in workshopping your fears and developing in your fears. And before we get going, I just do want to make sure, guys, make sure you give me a thumbs up or let me know in the chat section that my audio is okay today. Last week, I know we had some audio issues. I think in the long term, it was my computer was playing up somehow. I don't know what was going on, but it played up a bit and there was a bit of a delay, and I looked like I was, doing one of those voiceover for Chinese movie or something. And it all got corrected by YouTube once it went, the archived version. But just let me know that that the voice is okay and that we're in sync. If we're not, there's not much I can do about it, and I'll have to try because I think I fixed it, but let me know if everything's okay. Linda, maybe you can just give me a yes, a thumbs up, everything's fine. So let's first of all, this is the time of year, isn't it, where we do reassess a whole range of things to do with our learning to sing. Last week's pre-record video, one of last week's pre-record video, we talked about practice, learning to get better value out of the time you spend practicing your voice. It's also a time of year where we start to reassess, why are we doing certain things? Why do I sing? What am I wanting to get out of this singing thing? Is this singing thing, what role does it play in my life? For some, it's a double-edged sword. It plays the role of excitement, and it's something that they get a lot of joy out of. But for others, it literally can be something that scares them, that causes them to have high levels of anxiety. And that the first thing that can be is driven by a fear of failure, a fear that you're not going to measure up. And when I hear that reflected back to me in my studio, it's always heard with a sense of concern for the individual, because that sense of fear has typically been injected, deposited into that person, often at a young age. And this is something that we all need to grapple with, I think, at some point in some area of our life, because none of us want to fail. None of us set out in life. My big, thing I want to do in life is fail and fail miserably. None of us do that. We all want to succeed to varying levels, but none of us want to fail. And so there is this real sense of fear of failure. And I think, sadly, and we've talked many times about this next point on the channel, is that it's because I think in many respects in modern society we have this, the haves and the have-nots set up around singing. And we have the singers and the non-singers, and the vast majority of us apparently are non-singers, which we already know is an absolute load of codwash. And what is codwash, by the way? Leave me a suggestion in the live comments, if you know what codwash is. I've just seen Karen and Linda telling me that the audio is good. Excellent. Good to have you, Karen. Karen will also be helping Linda with our moderation today. So, so codwash. So we know that this is not true. That this is not. It's not a matter of we have the scenario where we have the singers and the non-singers. But even when we know that that's not the case, that's not what we should be thinking about ourselves, the structure of society can be so overwhelming that we're concerned about how we're going to measure up. And the moment we step into that game of will I measure up, it's all too easy to fall into the trap then of a fear of failing to measure up. And so it's so important to step off that merry-go-round. There is no answers there. That merry-go-round will only serve to really cause you some heartache. That can also be driven by a poor self-esteem. And I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not going to pretend to be one right now, but I do encourage you, if you think that perhaps a poor self-esteem is what's driving your fear when it comes to your singing, I would encourage you to talk to someone about that, a trusted person. Now, whether that be your singing teacher, whether that be a family member, a very close friend, or a trained professional counsellor or psychologist, do whatever it takes to overcome your fears this year. It's a matter of, and we're going to talk about in a moment about intrinsic and extrinsic locus of control, something that I've mentioned before, and I want to mention it again in regards to today's topic. But before we do, we'll talk about that now. So the intrinsic locus and extrinsic locus of control says that, everything that happens to me is externally not my fault. If I'm running late to a bus and I miss a bus, to get to work, well, it's not my fault that I run late. It was the bus's fault because it arrived 3 minutes early, than I was expecting it to. And so it's the bus's fault that I've missed the bus. An intrinsic locus of control, same scenario, running to the bus, you see the bus there, the bus leaves. An intrinsic locus of control goes, I've just missed the bus. Do you know what? Tomorrow I need to be here earlier. An intrinsic locus of control takes ownership of managing that scenario and goes, you know what? My bad. I should have been here on time. Not in this instance. I need to be here earlier to, mitigate the chance of missing the bus. That's a very simplistic, view of what an intrinsic and extrinsic locus of control is. And so make sure that you start to develop an intrinsic locus of control when it comes to the fears that you have, the anxieties that you have around your singing. Perhaps your anxieties and your fears are around forgetting your lyrics. Hey, join the club, that would be mine. But there are very real things that you can do to mitigate that experience and to reduce, to build an intrinsic locus of control response to that. It means that you have to spend more time developing the memory input and developing the memory around those lyrics. That's just one example that comes to mind. And then finally, before we get to your questions, the other thing that we might want to think about when it comes to the fear of singing is, you know, one thing that builds fear is actually a lack of discipline. Now, this is not the case for all of you, and some of you, your fears are seated in far more serious things that you do need to talk to someone about. But there are a few of us where actually, you know, the number one thing that will build nerves, you know, around your performance quicker than anything else, and that is simply a lack of preparation, not actually taking the time to prepare correctly. And that's just a lack of discipline. And here's another opportunity to take an intrinsic locus of control. You know, if you do a gig, you know, at any level, and for some reason it goes all haywire and belly up, it goes poorly, you know, sometimes it's worth looking back and going, maybe I didn't do enough preparation. Maybe there was a lack of discipline. Maybe my work ethic needs to be, you know, looked at a little bit more, and maybe I just need to be a little bit more regular in my practice. Maybe I needed to be a little bit more dedicated and disciplined around my preparation. So look, there are many different things that fuel our fears when it comes to singing, and you know, I can only really be general here on the video, but I do encourage you to face your fears this year, look them straight down the barrel, and say to yourself, this year I'm going to really tackle that fear. I'm really going to take it head on and do whatever it takes to apply yourself to overcoming those fears. And so if singing in public is a real fear for you, perhaps this is the year that you need to find the right support, build the right support structures around you. Maybe this year, 2018, maybe this is your year to really overcome that fear. And I'm not talking about, you know, singing publicly by Easter. I'm talking about singing publicly perhaps in November or December. You know, take the opportunity to really use this year to be a year where you can look back and go and be really proud of yourself that you have overcome one significant fear in your life. I hope that's helpful today. We are now going to turn our attention to looking at your question and answers right after this. Okay, so let's have a look at our questions here, and I'm going to go all the way back up because I did see Gavin jumped straight in. Gavin actually had left a question before it even gone live, which is a heads up for you all. You can actually do that. You can be sitting there waiting for the video to start. Gavin asked, why am I more agile in falsetto head voice? Gavin, without hearing you directly, I would think that it's almost likely that you find that for you to access your upper register into your falsetto, your shortener muscles, the thyroarytenoid muscles, have to completely disengage for you to access that register. And in doing so, I dare say you're finding that the voice has a freedom that it doesn't necessarily have when your thyroarytenoid muscles, what many people still sometimes refer to as the vocalis muscle, when the vocalis muscle is not overactive, and therefore the voice has that little bit more freedom. And it may well be that's what's going on there, Gav. There's a few new names here to me, which is awesome. Thanks for jumping in, guys. And if you are new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the white bell icon. We do this every Monday, 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So whatever time it is in your part of the world, this is the time we do it, every Monday. For a lot of you, it's still Sunday. Jumping down here, looking for... So we've got, Denise, someone from Adelaide. Adelaide is sort of, probably about 2.5 hours flight from where I am. Nice to have another Aussie here with us. It's winter in India, but it's pleasantly warm. Yeah, okay. I think we talked about this last week. I thought it was always warm in India, but apparently not. I was mistaken. So Jonathan here's an interesting question. Jonathan is asking, how do you feel your audience and get them to adapt to your style when singing? That is a really interesting question. Jonathan, some of this stuff actually, and this is one area where I think to a certain extent, in many respects, your question really goes to, there are some things that cannot be taught here in the studio, in my studio, in anyone else's singing teaching studio. Some things can only be learnt on stage, doing it, being in front of an audience, and being in front of many audiences over many years. Because Jonathan's question, I think, highlights a really important thing, and that is, audiences are different. You can go from one night to the next and doing the same gig, and yet the feel of the room, the biofeedback of the group that you're singing for, the audient, can be so different. And so learning to read that is an art form. It's a real skill and craft that takes time. And, when it comes to getting them to adapt to you, it's a big question, because there's so much about developing a rapport with your singers, with your audience, that it's so important to, that's a hard question to answer, outside of, getting you up and getting you singing, and I wish I could, my brain's just not giving me a really good thing, solid thing to lock onto there, Jonathan, outside of the fact that saying, yes, there are times when you're going to maybe sometimes you've got to change the songs you're doing, because, if you're in a pub gig, maybe, if you get a hen's night walk through, in the middle of your second set, and you're doing, 1950s songs, because that was the group that seemed to be in there before, you're going to have to quickly shift across and suit, start doing, YMCA and the Nutbush very quickly for the hen's night, because that's what they're going to want. So there is sort of a skill to that as well. I don't feel like I gave you a very good answer there, Jonathan, but I hope that's helpful. Imsu's asking, so how can we be a successful musician? Well, I often say, Imsu, that here in Australia, I say to many of my clients, many of my professional clients, that if you can put I'm talking now professional level, if you can put a roof over your head and do it for an extended period of time, then I think in Australia you've been a very successful musician. Notice I didn't say that you were a household name, you'd become famous and you were rich. It's just if you can consistently put a roof over your head, I think you're doing very well. As far as success is such a broad term. It's, success means so many different things to so many different people. I think if, like today, we're talking about fear. For some people, they're going to get to the end of this year and they're going to stand in front of a group of people and sing for the very first time. And they may not even do what, some other people might think is a great job. But in my books, that would be success, because they've overcome fear. They've set a goal for themselves and they've overcome that fear and achieved. And so for me, that would be success. So it's going to be different for everyone. Denise is asking, any good vocal exercises? Denise, it may be that you're new to the channel. Perhaps you could jump across to my channel, and there is over 300 videos there that will take you through a whole range of singing exercises, and many of them are taken from my exercise CD, Dr. Dan's Voice Essentials, and you can jump along and have a look at that. And just on that note, next Monday we have the pre-production. I go into pre-production for Dr. Dan's Voice Essentials Exercise 2. I am super excited about what this next CD will have for us all. So I'll keep you abreast of what's going on there and take you on the journey of developing that. Hopefully I'm hoping that that'll go live. Not live. It'll be available for you guys to get a hold of, around about May, June. So keep an ear out for that. And I haven't also mentioned before we go to another question. In fact, the next question might have to be the last. The other thing I haven't mentioned too is don't forget this not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday I have a big video coming out. I'm going to keep you in suspense. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I've put a lot of pre-production effort into this, paid for a director, the whole shebang. I'm really hoping that it proves to be a very helpful video for a lot of people. And I'm going to be asking you and reminding you next Monday when that video goes live. Look, I love it when you share my videos and with your friends and fellow singers. But next Wednesday, not this one, not Wednesday this coming, but the 31st, I think it's Wednesday the 31st of January. When it goes live, I so want you to help me share it because I think there's a real statement in it, and you'll just have to wait and find out what that's all about. Coming down here, unlikely source. I'd assume cod wash is akin to flapdoodle. Yeah, perhaps. I've never heard the term flapdoodle, but perhaps perhaps it is. Okay, I'm going to give our last question to Simona. I struggle with belting. I get scared approaching that part in the song, and I end up going into my falsetto because I feel the audience will think I'm too loud. Simona, firstly, the one thing that you do want to make sure of is make sure, Simona, that when you are learning to belt, that you're doing it correctly. And there are a few different ways to approach this. My approach is you've got to make sure that you've got good balance, good focus in the voice, reduced air pressure. It's a sense, it's counterintuitive. It's a sense of reduced air pressure, and it can feel a bit unusual for people when they're first learning to do it. And then from that point forward, it's about building the musculature to take on that load, that intensity, that level of energy that the voice is employing belt. And then it's a bit like learning to do the splits. If I did the splits here on I would do myself a great deal of damage. It would be unpleasant for me and unpleasant for those watching. I might get a few hits from it from people sharing the hilariousness of it. But the reason I would struggle is because my ligaments and my tendons have not been taught to stretch. They haven't actually got to a point where they'll go the full distance. In fact, I don't even try. So probably like this. The same kind of goes for learning to belt. You have to learn to belt. So if just say I did decide I wanted to learn to do the splits, then it would take me months, if not years, to actually edge out that ligament, edge out the movement and stretch out the ligament and the musculature so that it could go that distance, that full range needed for the splits. And to a certain extent, we'd have to do the same thing with belt. We need to, extend. What we're doing is, in many respects, my approach to belt is we are not allowing the voice to transition fully into an upper register sound. And in requiring the voice to maintain that shortener dominance, we're stretching the musculature out. So with my students, I'm always doing that one semitone at a time. So we might get to one semitone, and then the next fortnight it might be another semitone. Then it might take a month to get another semitone. There does come a point where you reach an anatomical limit. If you're learning to do the splits, you can't all things being equal, learn to do that. You don't suddenly, just keep going around as if you're, made of plasticine. There's an anatomical limit, and the same goes with you, with your voice, and it is about finding your anatomical limit. When learning to belt, I do encourage you, if possible, to do it under the supervision and instruction of a great singing teacher. And I do have a video on the subject that you can go and have a look at, Simona, but equally, it's something that I always encourage people to do with a singing teacher. And I do want to say also, if you're an adolescent voice and you're currently going through voice change, it is definitely an area that I'd want to see you do with the assistance of a singing teacher, because there are times in the developing voice where belt activity, the intensity and that highly energized mode is probably not what we would be, wanting to do, I don't think. I think it's good at times with the adolescent voice to just be measured. Okay, I hope that's been a helpful session today. Leave me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the Hangout. Remember, we do this every Monday, and we answer a range of questions, and we talk about a subject like we did today, and the fear of learning to sing and the fear of singing and all that sort of stuff. I hope it's been helpful. Hey, if you've never subscribed before to the channel, please come and join our community here at Voice Essentials. We're friendly. As I said before, we're not the biggest Learn to Sing YouTube channel, but I like to think we're one of the friendliest, and you'll certainly, if you've never joined us before, you'll get a lot of support here, not just from myself, but from the other people here in the community, many of whom hang out regularly for this live Hangout, Gavin being one of them, and Karen and Matt, and I'm looking through all the names down here. It's always good to hang out with these guys. And Linda, of course, who's been doing a bang-up job of looking at our keeping us safe as we hang out together, safe from the trolls. But look, until I see you in the next Voice Essentials video, and until you subscribe, don't forget to subscribe, hit the white bell icon and all of that, so I can hang out with you again. I look forward to seeing you in the next Voice Essentials video. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.